The studio lights burned hot, casting a golden glow across the set of Jennifer Hudson's talk show. The audience buzzed with anticipation, their chatter a low hum as they waited for the next segment. Jennifer, radiant in a deep purple dress, stood center stage, her smile wide but her eyes sharp, scanning the crowd. She was in her element, commanding the room with a warmth that felt like a hug but carried an edge of authority. Today's guest was Blake Shelton, the country music superstar whose charm and quick wit had made him a fan favorite on television screens for years. The producers had billed this as a fun, lighthearted episode, a chance for two music giants to trade stories and laughs. But the air felt heavier than usual, charged with something unspoken. Backstage, Blake lounged in the green room, his cowboy boots propped on a coffee table. He was flipping through his phone, a half-empty coffee cup in hand, when one of Jennifer's assistants poked her head in. 5 minutes, Mr. Shelton, she said, her voice clipped. Blake nodded without looking up, his fingers still scrolling. He'd done hundreds of these shows, from late-night gigs to morning talk fests, and he knew the drill. Flash a grin, tell a funny story, plug the new album. Easy, but something about this setup felt off. Maybe it was the way the assistant avoided his eyes, or the faint murmur of the crew outside, their voices too low to catch but urgent enough to notice. On set, Jennifer was wrapping up a segment with a local chef, laughing as she tasted a spoonful of gumbo. The audience clapped, and the cameras panned to capture her infectious energy. But as the crew reset for Blake's entrance, her smile tightened just a fraction. She'd heard the whispers too, the ones about Blake's mood today. He'd been on a press tour for weeks, crisscrossing the country, and the grind was wearing on him. Word was he'd snapped at a reporter in Nashville over a question about his personal life, and the clip was making rounds online. Jennifer didn't care for gossip, but she cared about her show. This was her space, her rules, and she wasn't about to let anyone disrupt the vibe she'd built. The stage manager signaled and the band struck up a twangy riff. Blake's cue. He strode out, all easy swagger, his plaid shirt untucked, just enough to say he didn't try too hard. The crowd erupted, and he waved, his grin wide but not quite reaching his eyes. Jennifer met him halfway, her arms open for a quick hug. Blake Shelton, y'all, she called, and the applause swelled. They settled into the plush chairs, the set designed to feel like a cozy living room, though the bright lights and camera lenses killed any real intimacy. So, Blake, Jennifer began, her voice smooth as velvet. You've been out there making hits, stirring up trouble. What's the story? He chuckled, leaning back, one arm slung over the chair. Oh, you know, just trying to keep the music alive and the whiskey flowing, he said, earning a laugh from the crowd. But there was a bite to his tone, a sharpness that didn't match the playful banter Jennifer was aiming for. She tilted her head, her eyes locking onto his. Whiskey, huh? You saving any for the rest of us? She teased, trying to steer things light. The audience laughed again, but Blake's smile flickered. He shifted in his seat, and for a split second, his gaze darted to the side, like he was sizing up an exit. The conversation rolled on, covering his latest album, his tour, his life on the ranch. Jennifer was a pro, tossing out questions that should have been softballs, but Blake's answers came with an edge. He talked over her once, then twice, his voice louder than necessary, like he was trying to dominate the space. The audience didn't seem to notice, caught up in his charisma, but Jennifer's jaw tightened. She'd dealt with big personalities before, but this felt different, like he was testing her. Then came the question about his recent press tour, the one that had sparked that viral clip. So, Blake, she said, her tone still warm but probing. You've been out there talking to folks, and some of them got you a little fired up. What's that about? His eyes narrowed, just for a moment, before he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You know, Jennifer, some people just don't know when to quit asking dumb questions, he said, his voice low but pointed. The audience tittered, thinking it was a joke, but the air shifted. Jennifer's smile held, but her eyes didn't waver. Dumb questions, huh? Well, you're on my show now, so I guess I better make him good. She shot back, her tone playful but with a steel undercurrent. The crowd laughed, but the tension was there, simmering just below the surface, ready to spill over. The stage lights seemed to burn brighter as the tension hung between Jennifer and Blake, a live wire sparking just out of view. The audience, still chuckling at Jennifer's quick comeback, didn't quite catch the shift, but the crew did. A cameraman adjusted his lens, zooming in on Blake's face, where a muscle twitched in his jaw. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxed but her eyes locked on him, reading every micro-expression. She'd hosted enough guests to know when someone was teetering on the edge of control, and Blake was there, his earlier swagger, now laced with something defensive, almost defiant. So, let's talk about something fun, Jennifer said, pivoting smoothly, her voice a warm anchor pulling the show back to safer waters. You've got this new song, Backroad Heart, and folks are saying it's your most personal yet. What's the story behind it? She crossed her legs, her smile inviting but firm, like she was giving him a chance to reset. The audience clapped, eager for a glimpse into Blake's world, and for a moment, it seemed like he'd take the bait. He ran a hand through his hair, his grin flickering back to life. Well, you know, it's about the simple things. He started, his drawl thick, driving down a dirt road, windows down, just you and someone special. The crowd cooed, charmed by the image, but Jennifer wasn't letting it slide so easily. Simple, huh? Sounds like there's more to it than that, she pressed, her tone teasing but pointed. You don't write a song that raw without a little heartbreak in there, right? It was a softball wrapped in barbed wire, and Blake's smile tightened. He shifted again, his boots scuffing the polished floor. Maybe, he said, his voice lower now, but I don't like airing my dirty laundry on TV, Jennifer. Some things are better left on the road. The audience laughed, thinking it was part of the act, but Jennifer's eyes flicked to the stage manager, who stood frozen off stage, her headset pressed tight to her ear. Blake's words weren't just a quip, they were a line in the sand. Jennifer tilted her head, her smile unwavering but her gaze sharpening. Oh, come on now, Blake, we're just having a conversation, she said, her voice honeyed but firm. This is a safe space. You can share a little, can't you? The crowd cheered, egging him on, but Blake's expression darkened, his fingers drumming on the armrest. Safe space, he said, his tone carrying a bitter edge. Y'all think you want the truth, but you just want a headline. The words landed like a punch, and the audience's laughter faltered, replaced by a murmur of confusion. Jennifer's smile didn't budge, but her eyes were steel now, holding his gaze like a challenge. She wasn't just a host, she was a performer who'd clawed her way to this stage, and she wasn't about to let Blake derail her show. Well, we're here for the real you, Blake, she said, her voice steady but with a bite. But if you're not feeling it, we can move on. The crowd clapped, sensing the shift but not fully grasping it. Blake leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice dropping to a near growl. Move on. That's what y'all always do, isn't it? Next question, next guest, next story to twist. The audience went quiet, the air thick with unease. Jennifer's producer, standing just off stage, signaled to cut to commercial, but Jennifer held up a hand, subtle but firm, keeping the cameras rolling. She wasn't done. Twist, she said, her voice calm but cutting. Nobody's twisting. Anything, Blake, you're on my stage, and I'm asking you to show up, that's all. The words hung there, a gauntlet thrown down. Blake's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it looked like he might back off. But then he leaned closer, his voice loud enough for the mics to catch every syllable. Your stage, huh? Guess that makes you the queen. Then the audience gasped, a mix of shock and nervous laughter rippling through them. Jennifer's smile finally cracked, not into anger but into something colder, more controlled. She leaned forward, matching his intensity. Damn right it does, she said, her voice low but resonant, carrying the weight of someone who knew exactly who she was. The stage manager's hand hovered over the commercial break button, but Jennifer's gaze flicked her way, a silent command to hold off. The audience was on edge now, their eyes darting between the two stars, sensing something raw unfolding. Blake's jaw clenched, his hands gripping the armrests like he was anchoring himself against a storm. He'd come here expecting a friendly chat, but now he was in a showdown, and Jennifer wasn't backing down. The silence that followed Jennifer's words was deafening, the kind that makes a studio audience hold its breath. The cameras stayed locked on her and Blake, their faces a study in contrast. Her poised, unyielding, him coiled like a spring ready to snap. The crowd's earlier cheers had dissolved into a tense hush, every eye glued to the stage. Jennifer's declaration, damn right it does, still echoed, a line that carried the weight of her authority and dared Blake to push further. He sat back, his grin gone, replaced by a hard stare that seemed to weigh his next move. The crew, frozen off stage, waited for a signal, but Jennifer's subtle nod kept the cameras rolling. This was her show, and she was steering it, even if it was veering into uncharted territory. Blake's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on his chair, his eyes flicking to the audience, then back to Jennifer. You want real, Jennifer, he said, his voice low but carrying a challenge. Fine, let's talk about how these shows work. You bring me out here, put me in this chair, and expect me to spill my guts for your ratings. The audience stirred, a mix of gasps and murmurs rippling through. Some thought he was joking, others sensed the bitterness in his tone. Jennifer didn't flinch. She leaned back, crossing her arms, her expression calm but her eyes like daggers. Nobody's forcing you to be here, Blake, she said, her voice steady. You came to promote your album. I'm giving you the mic. Use it or don't. The crowd clapped, a reflex to her confidence, but it was scattered, uncertain. Blake's jaw tightened, and he leaned forward again, his voice rising. Oh, I'll use it, but I'm not here to play your game, answering questions about my life like it's some soap opera. You want a story? Here's one. I'm tired of folks like you acting like you know me. The words cut through the air, raw and unfiltered. The audience gasped again, louder this time, and a few people shifted in their seats, sensing the conversation spiraling. Jennifer's producer, now visibly anxious, whispered into her headset, but Jennifer's hand flicked up, a silent command to stay the course. Folks like me, Jennifer repeated, her voice slow, deliberate, each word landing like a stone. You mean folks who work hard, build something real, and invite you to be a part of it. That's what this is. Blake. My show, my space, my rules. You don't get to come in here and throw shade because you're having a bad day. The audience erupted, a mix of cheers and shocked laughter, feeding off her strength. She wasn't just responding. She was reclaiming the narrative, and Blake knew it. His eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of something else. Maybe respect, maybe regret, buried under the defiance. He opened his mouth to fire back, but Jennifer didn't give him the chance. Let me tell you something, she continued, her voice rising just enough to command the room. I've been in this game long enough to know when someone's trying to dodge. You want to talk about real? Let's talk about how you walked in here with an attitude, thinking you could run this stage. This ain't your ranch, Blake. This is my house. The crowd roared, fully on her side now, their applause a wave crashing over the tension. Blake's face reddened, his hands clenching, into fists, but he didn't speak. For the first time, he looked caught, like he'd underestimated the woman across from him, off stage. The producer signaled again, desperate for a commercial break. But Jennifer shook her head, her eyes never leaving Blake. She was in control, and she wasn't about to let him off easy. So, what's it gonna be? She asked, her voice softer, now, but no less firm. You gonna sit here and have a real conversation, or you gonna keep throwing punches and see where that gets you? The question hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in an invitation. The audience leaned forward, their anticipation palpable, waiting for Blake's next move. His eyes locked with hers, and for a moment, it was just the two of them, the rest of the world fading away. Blake's shoulders slumped slightly, the fight draining from his posture. You're tough, Jennifer, he said, his voice quieter now, almost grudging. I'll give you that. It wasn't an apology, but it was a concession, a crack in his armor. The crowd murmured, sensing a shift, but Jennifer didn't soften. She leaned forward, her smile returning, but with an edge. Toughs, what got me here, she said. Now, you want to keep going, or you need a minute to cool off? The question was pointed, a warning disguised as courtesy, and it left Blake at a crossroads, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The studio air crackled with the weight of Jennifer's question, her words hanging like a spotlight trained on Blake. His concession, grudging as it was, had shifted the dynamic, but the tension hadn't dissolved. It had only morphed into something quieter, more volatile. The audience, still buzzing from the verbal sparring, leaned in, their eyes darting between the two stars. Jennifer's smile, sharp and controlled, held the stage, while Blake's posture, slouched but tense, betrayed a man wrestling with his next move. Her offer, to keep going or cool off, was less a lifeline than a test, and everyone in the room knew it. Blake ran a hand over his face, his fingers lingering at his jaw as if to steady himself. All right, Jennifer, he said, his voice low, almost a growl, but stripped of its earlier venom. Let's keep going. The crowd clapped, a hesitant ripple at first, then stronger, sensing a truce, however fragile. Jennifer nodded, her eyes never leaving his, reading him like a script she'd memorized. Good choice, she said, her tone smooth but with a lingering edge. So, let's try this again. Your new album, it's got a lot of heart. What's one song on there that means the most to you, and why? It was a reset, a chance for Blake to reclaim the narrative. But her gaze made it clear, no more games. He exhaled, leaning back, his hands resting on his knees. There's a track called Old Gravel Road, he started, his drawl softer. Now, more reflective, wrote it after a long night, just me and my guitar, thinking about where I came from. It's about the roads that lead you home, even when you've lost your way. The audience could drawn into the vulnerability, and for the first time, Blake's voice carried something real, unpolished. Jennifer tilted her head, her expression softening just a fraction. That's beautiful, she said, her voice warm, but measured. Sounds like it comes from a deep place. What was that night like for you? The question was gentle, but it probed, and Blake's eyes flickered, like he was weighing how much to give. It was quiet, he said, his voice steady but distant. Just me, the stars, a bottle of bourbon. You ever have those nights where you're looking back, wondering if you made the right turns? The audience murmured, relating to the universal ache in his words, and Jennifer nodded, her guard lowering slightly. Oh, I know those nights, she said, her tone almost confiding, but those are the ones that make you, don't they? The ones that hurt a little. For a moment, the exchange felt like a real conversation, the kind that happens off camera. Away from the lights, the crowd was rapt, sensing the shift from confrontation to connection. But Blake's next words came too fast, too sharp, like he couldn't resist the urge to push. Yeah, well, not everybody gets to turn those nights into a talk show, he said, his voice tinged with bitterness. The audience stiffened, the fragile rapport cracking. Jennifer's smile froze, her eyes narrowing as she registered the jab. Meaning what, Blake? She asked, her voice calm but cold, each word precise. He shrugged, his grin returning but laced with defiance. Just saying, some of us don't have a stage to work out our problems. We just live in. The crowd gasped, the tension snapping back into place, thicker than before. Jennifer leaned forward, her hands clasped, her voice dropping to a near whisper that carried through the mics. You think I didn't live my problems to get here? She said, her words slow, deliberate. You think this stage just fell into my lap? I earned every inch of it, Blake, through nights a lot darker than yours. The audience erupted, their cheers a roar of support. But Jennifer's eyes stayed locked on his, unyielding. Blake's face reddened, his hands gripping the armrests. I didn't mean it like that, he muttered, but the damage was done. Jennifer shook her head, her smile gone now, replaced by a look of quiet fury. You meant exactly what you said, she countered, her voice steady but cutting. And I'm done letting you take shots at me and my show. You got something to say? Say it plain, or get off my stage. The crowd gasped again, louder, some clapping, others whispering. The energy chaotic. The producer, now frantic, signaled for a commercial. But Jennifer's glare stopped her cold. Blake stood, his chair scraping the floor, his height looming over the set. You want plain? Fine. I'm sick of this fake nice, everybody acting like they care when it's all for the cameras. His voice boomed, raw and unfiltered, and the audience fell silent, shocked by the outburst. Jennifer rose too, matching his stance, her presence just as commanding. Fake nice, she said, her voice rising now, resonant with authority. This is my house, Blake, and you don't get to disrespect it. You want to walk? Doors that way. The crowd roared, split between shock and awe as the standoff reached its breaking point. The studio felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with the weight of Jennifer's ultimatum. Blake stood tall, his frame casting a shadow across the set. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty, caught off guard by her unyielding stance. Jennifer, equally resolute, held her ground, her arms crossed, her gaze a blade that cut through his bravado. The audience was frozen, their earlier cheers replaced by a stunned silence, punctuated only by the faint hum of the studio lights. Her words, "You want to walk? Doors that way," echoed in the space, a line drawn with no room for retreat. The cameras, still rolling at Jennifer's insistence, captured every tense second, the crew too gripped to intervene. Blake's hands flexed at his sides, his jaw tight as he weighed his options. The crowd waited, breaths held, for his response. He took a step back, not toward the exit, but enough to signal a pause, his eyes still locked on Jennifer's. "You're really gonna do this, huh?" he said, his voice quieter now, but laced with defiance. "Kick me off your show because I called it like I see it." The audience murmured, some nodding in support of his candor, others shaking their heads at his audacity. Jennifer didn't blink. "I'm not kicking you off for speaking your mind," she said, her voice steady, resonant. "I'm telling you to respect this space or leave. Your choice." The crowd erupted, a mix of cheers and gasps, their loyalty split but leaning heavily toward Jennifer. She was their anchor, the one who'd built this stage on authenticity and grit, and they felt her strength now. Blake's gaze darted to the audience, then back to her. His expression, a storm of frustration and something deeper, maybe regret. "Respect," he repeated, his tone bitter, almost mocking. "That's what you call this? Putting me on the spot, digging for dirt to keep your crowd clapping." His words were sharp, but his voice cracked slightly, betraying the weight of the moment. Jennifer's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed calm, cutting through the noise like a knife. "You think I'm digging for dirt, Blake? I gave you every chance to show up real, to talk about your music, your story, but you came in here swinging, and I'm not your punching bag." The audience roared again, their applause a wave of support, but Jennifer's focus never wavered. She took a step closer, her presence commanding despite the height difference. "You want to talk about respect? Start with yourself. You're better than this, and we both know it." The words hit like a gut punch, and for a moment, Blake's defiance faltered. His shoulders slumped, his eyes dropping to the floor, as if her call-out had stripped away the armor he'd been hiding behind. The crowd sensed the shift, their murmurs softening, waiting for what came next. Offstage, the producer was practically vibrating with anxiety, her headset buzzing with instructions from the control room, but Jennifer's subtle gesture kept the cameras on. This wasn't just a show anymore. It was a reckoning, and she was steering it to its conclusion. Blake rubbed the back of his neck, his voice low when he finally spoke. "Maybe I came in hot," he admitted, the words grudging, but genuine. "This press tour, it's been a lot. People poking at my life, my choices, like I owe him something." The audience softened, some nodding, relating to the pressure of scrutiny. Jennifer's expression didn't change, but her posture eased slightly, a sign she was listening. "I get it," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "This life ain't easy, but you don't get to take that out on me or my stage. You want to talk? I'm here. You want to fight? I'm ready for that too. The crowd chuckled, a release of tension, but Blake didn't laugh. He looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. You don't back down, do you? He said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The first real one all day. Jennifer tilted her head, her own smile returning. Sharp, but warm. Not a chance, she said, earning another round of applause. For a moment, it seemed like they might salvage the segment, find a way to bridge the gap. But Blake's next move was a spark to dry tinder. He shook his head, his smile fading. I respect that, Jennifer, I do. But I'm done playing nice. For the cameras, I'm out. He turned, his boots heavy on the stage, and started for the exit. The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath as the reality hit. Blake Shelton was walking off Jennifer Hudson's show. Jennifer didn't move, her eyes tracking him, her face a mask of controlled fury and disappointment. Your call, she said, her voice carrying just enough for the mics to catch. The crowd was on its feet now, some shouting support for Jennifer, others calling for Blake to stay, the chaos swelling as the stage door swung shut behind him. The echo of the stage door slamming behind Blake reverberated through the studio, a punctuation mark to the chaos that had just unfolded. The audience was a mix of stunned faces and restless energy, some standing, others whispering, their voices a low roar of disbelief. Jennifer remained center stage, her posture unbroken, her eyes fixed on the spot where Blake had disappeared. The cameras, still rolling at her command, captured the raw aftermath, her face a blend of resolve and quiet. Hurt the crowd's shouts for her mingled with calls for Blake to return, but the door stayed shut, his exit final. The producer, now pale, signaled frantically for a commercial break, but Jennifer's raised hand held the moment, refusing to let it slip away. She turned to the audience, her smile returning, not as warm as before, but steady, commanding. Well, y'all, she said, her voice clear, carrying over the din. That was something, wasn't it? The crowd laughed, a nervous release, and clapped, their support for her swelling. She walked to the edge of the stage, closer to them, her presence filling the room. This show's about real moments, real people. Sometimes that means things get messy, but that's life, right? The audience roared, their applause a wave of loyalty, and Jennifer nodded, feeding off their energy. We don't shy away from messy here. We lean into it. Offstage, the crew scrambled, the producer whispering urgently into her headset. But Jennifer was in control, steering the ship through the storm. She paced slowly, her heels clicking on the polished floor, her voice taking on a preacher's cadence. I invited Blake here because I respect his music, his story, she said, her tone measured but firm. But respect goes both ways. You come into my house, you bring your best, or you don't come at all. The crowd erupted again, some shouting her name, others cheering her strength. It was a masterclass in reclaiming the narrative, and Jennifer was writing it in real time. She paused, letting the applause settle, then leaned forward, her eyes scanning the audience. Let me tell you something, she said, her voice dropping to a confiding tone. I've been through too much, fought too hard, to let anybody dim this light. This stage is where we lift each other up, where we tell the truth, even when it's hard. Blake made his choice, and I'm making mine. This show goes on. The audience was on its feet now, their cheers deafening, a testament to her ability to turn a derailment into a triumph. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the fire in her eyes, the unyielding spirit that had made her a star. Backstage, the mood was different. The crew buzzed with whispers, some shaking their heads at Blake's exit, others marveling at Jennifer's command. In the green room, Blake's team was already packing up, his manager on the phone, likely spinning the story before it hit the internet. But on stage, Jennifer was wrapping up, her voice rising to a crescendo. We're gonna keep this party going, she said, her smile wide now, defiant. We've got more guests, more stories, and a whole lot of love to share. Y'all with me? The crowd roared, their energy a tidal wave, and Jennifer clapped along with them, her laughter ringing out as the band kicked in, playing a soulful riff to transition to the next segment. Jennifer glanced at the stage door one last time, her expression unreadable. The cameras panned to the audience, their faces alight with admiration, and the producer finally got her commercial break, the screen fading to black. But the story wasn't over. It was already rippling beyond the studio, clips of the showdown, spreading online, the internet dissecting every word, every glance. Jennifer had held her ground, turned a potential disaster into a moment of raw power, and the world was watching. The show went on, just as she'd promised, but the echo of Blake's exit lingered, a reminder that even the biggest stars can stumble when they step into someone else's light.